My sister admitted that she had stolen my money. And what are you going to do now? Sue me? She said. I smiled and left. Next day, when my lawyer called her. As soon as I walked into my apartment, something felt wrong. Everything looked normal. My furniture was in its place, my dishes were right where I left them, and my cat, Luna, came running up to me, meowing like crazy. I knelt down and scratched behind her ears, relieved that at least she seemed okay. Jessica was supposed to take care of her while I was away at work. That was the only reason she had my spare key. She didn't have to touch anything else. Just feed Luna, clean out her litter box, and leave. But as I walked through my apartment, something nagged at me. A feeling I couldn't shake. I shrugged it off and started unpacking. I opened my closet to put my bag away, and that's when I saw it. The pile of cash I had hidden under my clothes. It looked smaller. My stomach tightened. I kept my savings there, adding a little each paycheck. Before I left, I had counted it exactly. I knew exactly how much was there. But now the pile was visibly thinner. I pulled it out and started counting, my hands moving faster as I went. My chest felt tight when I finished. $5,000. Gone. I sat down on the bed, clutching the money in my hands. This wasn't a mistake. I didn't spend it. I didn't miscount. Someone had taken it. And the only person who had access to my apartment while I was gone was Jessica. I picked up my phone and called her. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. I didn't even bother texting. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to my parents' house. The drive felt like a blur, my mind racing through every possible explanation, but I kept circling back to the same conclusion. She took it. My own sister had stolen from me. $5,000 wasn't pocket change. This wasn't borrowing a few dollars and forgetting to pay it back. This was outright theft. I drove to my parents' house and walked in without knocking. They were all sitting around the kitchen table eating dinner. Jessica was scrolling through her phone with one hand and eating with the other. My parents looked up at me, but no one said anything. Just a silent look, like I was the one interrupting something. I didn't sit down. I didn't even take off my jacket. You took my money. Jessica didn't even look up. She finished chewing, wiped her mouth with a napkin, and finally met my eyes. Yes. I did. For a second, I thought I had misheard. What? She shrugged like it was nothing. I bought a ticket to Hawaii. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd that I didn't know how else to react. $5,000, Jessica. Are you serious? Mom sighed. Harold, do we have to do this now? I turned to her. Did you hear that? She stole $5,000 from me. Dad put down his fork, finally acknowledging the situation. Well, you shouldn't have left that much cash lying around. I felt my eye twitch. It was in my closet. Under my clothes. She had no reason to go in there. Jessica grinned. What are you going to do now? Are you going to sue me? She thought this was funny. She thought she could get away with it. I smiled. Not because I agreed with it. Because I already knew how this was going to end. I turned and walked out. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, Jessica's smug face flashed in my mind, along with my dad's casual response. Well, you shouldn't have left so much money lying around. Like it was my fault. Like Jessica stealing $5,000 wasn't the real problem. By morning, I was tired of being angry. I wanted action. I called my lawyer, Greg, as soon as I got up. I explained everything and he didn't even hesitate. I'll take care of it, he said. An hour later I got a call from Jessica. I stared at my phone for a second, debating whether or not to answer. But curiosity won out. The second I picked it up, she started screaming. Are you serious, Harold? A lawyer? You're actually going through with this? Yes, I said. I am. She scoffed. Over $5,000? About $5,000 you stole. She went silent for a second. You're such a loser. she muttered. You don't even need the money. That made me laugh. That's not the point, Jessica. You think you can just take whatever you want and get away with it? I already spent it. Not my problem. She exhaled sharply. You're really going to take your own sister to court? I'm giving you a chance to fix this before it gets that far. Silence. Then she hung up. I expected her to call back, maybe to apologize or try to negotiate, but she didn't. Instead, 20 minutes later, my mother called. Harold, she began, her voice already in that disappointed tone she always used when I didn't do what she wanted. This is ridiculous. Jessica is your sister. So? And families don't sue each other over money. I laughed. Families don't steal from each other either, Mom. She made a mistake. She knew what she was doing. Harold. A pause. Then, in a softer voice. She can't pay you back. Not my problem. She's already booked her trip. The money's gone. Again. Not my problem. She sighed. Your father and I think you need to let this go. It's just money. I clenched my jaw. If it's just money, why don't you pay me back for them? She fell silent. That's what I thought. After another sigh, she muttered. I don't know what's happened to you, Harold. You used to be such a nice boy. I rolled my eyes. I don't know what happened to you and Dad. You used to be parents. I hung up on her before she could say anything else. I had barely put my phone down when I got a notification. A Venmo request. From Jessica. I opened it. She had the audacity to ask me for $5,000, with a message attached, for emotional damages. For ruining my life. I stared at it for a full minute, trying to process the absolute insanity of it. Then I did the only sensible thing. I took a screenshot. And sent it to my lawyer. If Jessica thought this was over, she had another thing coming. By the time the afternoon rolled around, I was still seething. The audacity of this Venmo request was beyond belief. Not only was Jessica unapologetic, she actually thought she was the victim here. Greg, my attorney, called me back. I've sent her an official demand letter. He said. She has 48 hours to return the money before we escalate. I thanked him and hung up. Then, just as I was about to make myself a coffee, I got a text message. From Jessica, you're going to regret this. I frowned. Was that a threat? A warning? I didn't have time to find out, because 10 minutes later someone knocked on my door. I opened it, half expecting Jessica, but instead it was my father. I leaned against the doorframe. Didn't expect to see you. He didn't even say hello. You're off the case, Harold. I raised an eyebrow. No, I'm not. He sighed. Look, I know Jessica screwed up. But she's your sister. You can't just throw family under the bus like that. I crossed my arms. Funny, I thought the same thing when she stole my money. Dad clenched his jaw. You're really going to take your own sister to court over this? I stared at him. Would you say the same thing if I stole from her? He shifted uncomfortably but didn't answer. That's what I thought. Then he tried another approach. Jessica's life hasn't been easy, you know. I scoffed. Oh, there you go. She struggled. He continued. She needed a break, Harold. She wanted to take a trip and reset. I blinked. So her solution was to steal from me? It's just money. I almost laughed. So if it's just money, why don't you pay me back for it? He hesitated for a second. Then he sighed again. You know we can't afford that. I stared at him, the realization hitting me like a brick. Wait. Did you know? His silence told me everything. I shook my head, my blood boiling. Unbelievable. You knew she took it and you just hoped I wouldn't notice? It wasn't like that. No? Then what was it like? He exhaled. Look, it's done. She already bought the ticket. She's leaving in a week. Just let it go. I was speechless. Then I smiled. Well, I hope she enjoys her trip. Dad narrowed his eyes. What does that mean? I shrugged. Just that if she thinks she can get on a plane without consequences, she's in for a surprise. I saw a flicker of concern in his expression. Harold, don't do anything drastic. I smiled. Too late. As soon as he left, I grabbed my phone and called Greg again. Change of plans? I said. I want to hit them where it really hurts. Greg paused. What are you thinking? I grinned. Can you get a freeze on her assets? Like, say, her bank account? There was a silence. Then Greg chuckled. Now that's interesting. Do it. He sighed, but I could hear the amusement in his voice. Consider it done. Jessica thought she was untouchable. She thought she could steal from me and go to Hawaii without consequences. She was about to learn the hard way that she was wrong. The next morning I awoke to chaos. My phone was exploding with missed calls from Jessica, my mom, and my dad, plus a series of texts that made me laugh out loud the second I read them. From Jessica, what did you do? From Mom, Harold, this is getting out of hand. Call me right now. From Dad, fix this. Right now. I took my time getting out of bed, made myself some coffee, and enjoyed the quiet before calling Greg. Morning, he said, already knowing why I was calling. I take it you noticed. Oh yeah, I said, sipping my coffee. What exactly did you do? Greg chuckled. It was pretty simple. I filed for a temporary restraining order and labeled Jessica's use of the stolen money as fraud. Since she used it to make a big purchase, her plane ticket, it triggered an immediate review. Her bank accounts are temporarily frozen, and her credit card is flagged for suspicious activity. She's not going anywhere. I grinned. That's nice. Oh, and I added her parents to the lawsuit, Greg added. I almost choked on my coffee. Wait, what? They admitted they knew about it and did nothing to stop her. Legally, that makes them an accessory to fraud. I sat back and processed that. So what happens now? Well, Greg said, either they give you your money back, or this goes to court. And with their financial situation, I doubt they want to rack up legal fees. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. Jessica. This time I answered. As soon as she heard my voice, she exploded. What the hell, Harold? I just got an email saying my flight was cancelled. My bank account is frozen. I can't even buy a damn cup of coffee. Fix this. I grinned. Not my problem. You can't do this to me. I didn't do anything. You stole my money. This is just the consequence. I already spent it. Then find out. She groaned. Oh my God, Harold. You're ruining my life. I laughed. No, Jess, you did it to yourself. Then I hung up. Not 2 minutes later, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Then my dad. Ignored again. An hour later, they showed up at my apartment. I opened the door and leaned against the frame, arms crossed. That was fast. Mom pushed past me and went straight inside, like she owned the place. Dad followed, looking less angry and more tired. Mom spun around. You went too far, Harold. I raised an eyebrow. I took it too far. Jessica stole $5 grand from me, and I'm the one who took it too far. You froze her bank accounts. Yep. She can't access her money. I shrugged. She should have thought of that before she stole mine. Mom groaned. Harold, listen. We'll find a way to pay you back. But drop the lawsuit. Now. I stared at her. You'll pay me back? Yes, she said quickly. I crossed my arms. How? You just said last night you couldn't afford it. She hesitated. That's what I thought. Dad finally spoke. You're really willing to go to court over this? I didn't even blink. Absolutely. Mom exhaled sharply. We don't have that kind of money, Harold. I shrugged. Well, I guess I'll see you in court. Dad rubbed his face. Be reasonable. I'm being reasonable. You're the one trying to get away with fraud. Silence. Jessica didn't get on a plane. She wasn't sipping cocktails in Hawaii. And if they thought I was backing down, they were in for a rude awakening. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the email Greg had sent me. "Since you're here," I said, handing them my phone, "here's the official legal notice. You have 48 hours to return my money or this goes forward." Mom's face turned red. Dad just sighed. Jessica was about to find out she wasn't as untouchable as she thought. I fully expected them to storm out after I handed them the lawsuit. Maybe hurl some insults at me, maybe slam the door. But instead, my father did something unexpected. He sat down. Mom was still seething, grabbing my phone as if to throw it at me. "Harold, we're not doing this." I leaned against the counter and crossed my arms. "Then give me my money." She looked at me as if I had just asked her to rob a bank. Meanwhile, my dad was staring at the floor and rubbing his temple like he had a headache. Then he said, "Jessica doesn't have the money." I frowned. "Yeah, I figured. She spent it." Dad shook his head. "No. She didn't." I blinked. "What?" Mom shot him a look, but he ignored it. He took a long breath and finally met my eyes. "She didn't buy a plane ticket." I felt my stomach tighten. "Then where the hell is my money?" Dad hesitated and looked at Mom again. She looked like she was going to explode. But I wasn't interested in their silent argument. I grabbed my phone again and pulled up my banking app. "If she still has it, great. You can send it to me right now." Dad shook his head again. "It's gone." I stared at him. "Gone where?" He didn't answer. I turned to Mom. "Where is my money?" She exhaled sharply and crossed her arms. "It doesn't matter." I laughed in disbelief. "Excuse me? Jessica needed it more than you did." I was about 2 seconds away from losing it. "For what?" Mom hesitated, then said, "She was in debt, Harold." I stared at her. "Dead?" Dad sighed. "She owed people money. Not just credit card debt. It was bad." Something about the way he said bad made my stomach churn. Mom groaned. "I told you not to say anything." Dad ignored her. "Jessica wasn't just taking your money for fun, Harold. She was in trouble." I ran a hand over my face. "You're telling me she stole from me to pay off some kind of debt?" Dad nodded. "Debt to whom?" Silence. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just some stupid vacation. Jessica was in deep with someone. I grabbed my phone. "I'll call her." Mom's eyes widened. "Harold, no." I ignored her and called Jessica. She picked up immediately. "Oh my God, Harold, can you please just fix this?" she whined. "Shut up," I snapped. "You didn't buy a plane ticket, did you?" Silence. Then, in a much smaller voice, "No." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "Who do you owe money to?" She hesitated. "It's okay now. It's taken care of." "Who?" She didn't answer. I clenched my jaw. "Jessica, if you don't tell me the truth right now, I swear to God dash." "Some guys, okay?" she snapped. "I owed some guys money, and if I didn't pay them back, I was going to get hurt. Are you happy now?" I felt my stomach drop. This had just gone from annoying family drama to something much worse. Jessica was dealing with people who don't call lawyers. People who don't send demand letters. People who take things a lot further than that. And suddenly, $5,000 wasn't my biggest problem anymore. I gripped my phone tighter. "Jessica, what have you gotten yourself into?" She let out a shaky breath. "It doesn't matter. It's over. I paid them and they're gone." I wasn't convinced. "And you're sure about that?" Silence. I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Jessica, I don't know," she finally admitted. "I think so." I swore under my breath. My parents were watching me, Mom looking defensive, Dad looking exhausted. "You knew," I said, staring at them. "You knew she was involved with people like this, and you still acted like I was the bad guy." Mom crossed her arms. She's our daughter, Harold. So I'm not? I snapped. Because I'm pretty sure if I stole $5,000 and said, oops, I had to pay a debt, you'd be throwing me under the bus right now. Mom had nothing to say. Dad sighed. Look, you made your point, okay? Jessica's suffering enough. Just let this go. No, I said immediately. Not until I get my money back. Harold, Mom started, but I cut her off. No, I don't care. I don't care about her excuses. I don't care about her problems, and I definitely don't care about the fact that you two covered for her. Jessica was still on the line, quiet for once. I don't have it, Harold, she finally said. I can't pay you back. Then figure it out. She scoffed. How? I don't care. Sell your car, get a loan, work double shifts, not my problem. More silence. Then, in a much lower voice, I don't have a car anymore. I paused. What? Another beat of silence. Then she mumbled. I kind of had to give it to them. As part of the payment. Jesus Christ. I exhaled slowly. Then I guess you'd better get to work. Mom snapped. Harold, that's enough. No, I shot back. Enough was when she stole my money and expected me to just take care of it. Enough was when you both knew and didn't say anything. It was enough when Dad told me it was my fault for leaving cash in my own apartment. They all fell silent. I looked at my dad. You said I should have been more careful with my money. I turned to Mom. You said it was just money and I should let it go. Then I turned back to Jessica. But now that you're the one suffering, it's suddenly a crisis? Jessica sniffled. I had no choice, Harold. I shook my head. You had a choice before you borrowed from the wrong people. You had a choice before you stole from me. She didn't answer. I let out a slow breath. This is how it's going to go. You're going to pay me back. Every single cent. I don't care how long it takes. Until then, the lawsuit stands. Harold Dash. Mom started, but I cut her off. And you too, I said, looking at them. Can help her or not. I don't care. But I'm done being the family ATM. Jessica let out a bitter laugh. You're really not going to let this go? No, I'm not. Fine, she muttered. I'll figure it out. She hung up. I turned back to my parents. You can see yourselves out. They didn't argue. Mom gave me a look like I had somehow betrayed her, which almost made me laugh. Dad just sighed and walked out without another word. As soon as the door closed behind them, I sat down and rubbed my face. This whole thing was beyond crazy. But one thing was clear, Jessica had played with fire. She had lost her car, her money, and now she was about to lose a hell of a lot more. I wasn't going to be the one to clean up her mess anymore. She wanted to play stupid games? She finally won her stupid prize. It took 3 weeks, but I got every single cent back. Jessica had to borrow money from my parents, sell some of her stuff, and even get a second job. She complained the whole time, acting like I was the bad guy in all of this, but I didn't care. Every few days I got another payment, and the moment the last $5,000 hit my account, I sent Greg a message, drop the lawsuit. It's done. And just like that, it was over. Or at least the money part was. Because suddenly my parents and Jessica started acting different. Mom started calling me more. Just to check in. Asking how I was, how work was going. Dad, who barely spoke to me outside of holidays, suddenly wanted to have lunch. Even Jessica, who had spent weeks cursing my name, sent me a message. Hey, so we're still family, right? I didn't reply. I wasn't an idiot. I knew exactly what was going on. Now that they weren't in trouble, now that they weren't scrounging for money, they wanted things to go back to normal. They wanted to pretend that none of this had ever happened. But I wasn't interested. A month passed. I didn't call them. I didn't visit. Then one Sunday my phone rang. It was Mom. I let it go to voicemail. An hour later, another call. Dad. Ignored. Then a text from Jessica. Mom's making a big dinner tonight. You should come. I stared at it for a long time before I typed back. I'm busy. I wasn't. I just didn't care anymore. They had made it very clear where I stood in this family. I was the responsible one, the one who didn't get in trouble, the one they could take away when it was convenient. But the second I stood up for myself, I was the bad guy. Well, I didn't play that game anymore. I got my money back. That was all I needed. The rest? They could keep it.